Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Cloak and Dagger, as well as the latest episode of iZombie. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about the season finale of Cloak and Dagger, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of iZombie. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is the season finale of Cloak and Dagger, a great season finale. A lot of interesting things went down, so let's break this down. Obviously, Andre's power is sweeping all across New Orleans and is starting to bring in people, because obviously he doesn't need the records anymore. He can just full on kidnap them, make them part of his audience, so that they become, he just feeds off their despair constantly, kind of keep him in his godhood. I did like it later on of being like, wait, he's not really here, because he is kind of a god. He's more of like an omnipotent thing at this point in time. It's because he's no longer physically tied to his body anymore. It's just kind of like he's all around, kind of like a god in a sense. And it's, sucky you have to kind of compare him to that. But obviously, I love the whole thing of okay, so Tandy and Tyrone have to go to the one person that can help. Evita and Tyrone's so oh man, this is weird, I don't know, I want to respect her space, and Tandy's like, dude, we gotta do this. She's literally the only one that can help. And I like it that basically they staple down Ty's jacket, and that acts as a portal, and they both have to go in there. It's so interesting too, because it's right, technically this is Ty's first time in here. So I was like, that's so fascinating that's what that is, that's it's right. For him, he's at the gas station, but the gas station is all messed up and everything. I guess that's from Mayhem kind of doing her initial thing, because even the mall doors were broken. I was like, I assumed that was Mayhem, but it's not unless that's supposed to represent the fact is of well, because I guess when she became whole again, she just busted her way out of there. There's no reason to kind of get all fancy with it. I guess that's why the place got destroyed, because she went a little Mayhem mode when she was leaving. I guess that's how that whole thing went. I guess it wasn't just a simple it seemed like it was just kind of a moment she became whole again, she just popped out. But maybe, or is that supposed to be, like I said, my brain was alluding to, not unless that was supposed to mean something else came out of that world. I don't know. Either way, I at first was assuming it was going to be Bridget, but then maybe it's something else, but now I'm back to Bridget. I don't know. Either way. But I like that, the viewfinder is broken and everything. It's I don't know if I can do this. Because for Tandy, she just after everything, she's just I don't know if I feel like I'm the hero that everyone's needed. But it's you are, The fact of the matter is, you're kind of and I like that, it's Tyrone has her, they use the pennies to make his Vevey, and I love him being, she's okay, I'm almost done with the crosses. He's those aren't crosses. She's of course they are. What are they if they're not? And he's daggers. And I'm oh, that's pretty cool, because it's I never would have figured that out. But I like that, because to be fair, they're a divine pair. Their situation is tied together, so it's of course his Vevey would represent both of them. And for him, it's a dagger it's not a knife, it's not a sword, but it does the job just the same, because those daggers are filled with hope. And I just thought that was kind of pretty neat. And they end up finding their way to the mall, and I love that. It's okay, what is this? The mirrors are the different possibilities, and they walk through, and it's yo! I guess, obviously representing their hero path that they're on, the different possibilities. And they're kind of in their hero outfits. Tandy's obviously more so in her ballerina uniform, but I wonder, is that what that's supposed to be in the comic books? Because I don't know if she has different outfits or not, because the one I'm always associating with is the one she has in Ultimate Spider-Man, pure white suit. So I don't know if that's supposed to be a ballerina thing typically in the comic books, or whether that's just something specific to the show. Maybe because it's so interesting, because technically speaking, amongst the Marvel TV shows, you rarely get the superheroes wearing their specific stuff from the comic books. I guess because it's just, because even look at the X-Men movies. Most X-Men, take Wolverine for example, never ever wore his. There was winks and nods to it in the second Wolverine movie. There was what I thought that was the actual ending, but I think it's just an alternate ending that shows him getting that in the suitcase. Nevertheless, it's just that situation of holy crap, you're wearing your what is essentially your canonical outfit to a certain extent. It's just kind of interesting to me. And it was I really like the battle with Andre, because obviously Andre's going to do what he does. He uses your fears against you. And in Tandy's case, it was her dad. And in Tyrone's case, it was himself. And I was actually kind of surprised by that, but I guess it makes sense. For him, it's you would think maybe it'd be his mom or anything, or Billy or Connors, but it's that was stuff he already dealt with, but that wasn't his deepest despair. His deepest despair was confronting himself, because because in front of him, the Tyrone he's fighting is the Tyrone that's basically pushing at all his insecurities of like, oh, all you had to do was be perfect, you had to do this, keep your grades up, keep your head down, but you couldn't even do that. And now look what happened. It wasn't Billy's murder that broke your family. Your little rebellions did. You being so angry and everything. And the fact of the matter is, now your mom's a murderer because of it. She won't be the same because of you. And obviously with Tandy, it's like confronting her dad, but she feels a little powerless, because it's like her dagger won't help in the fight and everything. And it's like, she's like, Nathan keeps pushing her to be like, oh, like the fact of the matter is, you know, there's two sides to every story or something like that. But I did like ultimately what they did, though. They ended up switching and dealing with each other's despair. And like, you know, while they're facing each other, it's like, you know, Tandy is telling the fake Tyrone of like, you're not even half the man he is, because the fact of the matter is, Ty is no longer being bound to this notion of being perfect, like having to go to this line that people draw in the sand of like, this is who he needs to be. Why? Because the line is always moving, and the fact of the matter is of what people want from him, what people expect from him. And so for her, you know, it's like Tyrone is a better man because of the weight that's always put on him, and he still manages to stand up. And you have the same thing like Ty saying that to Nathan. It's like, the fact of the matter is, you had two beautiful people in your life, but rather than building them up, you tore them down. The fact of the matter is, Tandy is a fighter now. You know, she's stronger in spite of you. She won't be like you, you know. But Andre ended up switching them back to face their own fears because they were starting to win, you know. But ultimately, I did like the confrontations between them. It's that thing of like, you know, Tyrone no longer being bound by trying to be perfect. And for Tandy, it's like, yes, you will always be a part of me, but I will decide how much of a part of me you are. And I like that, like, her dagger becomes a sword. I'm like, yo! She leveled up. I thought that was pretty neat. I'm assuming that's like a permanent upgrade. I just thought that was pretty neat. And then they end up breaking free. And I love her daggers because they are whole. I wonder, is that something she could do from now on permanently on the outside? Could they not just hurt? Or is it just because of this instance? But like, she brought Mina, Michaela, as well as her mom back. She filled them with hope again. And I like her using like her light power as like a way to, because the light gives him his migraines and stuff. Because that's the whole thing. He still has his migraines. It's just doing his God thing is making it so that his migraines go away long enough that, you know, because he's constantly draining everyone's, you know, despair and passing his pain on to them and everything. And I love it when the time comes, it's like you're all alone, and it's like, oh, I got one more trick, and the darkness opens up, and there's Tandy with her sword and stabs. I'm like, yeah! And then Mina and Michaela and Melissa are there to kind of hold him down. And then both of them, Ty and Tandy, touching Andre, and it's like, oh, there's his despair. And his biggest despair we end up seeing later on is that record called First Migraine, because for him it's like that was his deepest despair, because that's what broke him. It's like, oh, my dreams, my aspirations, like all of his life kind of fell apart because of his first migraine, so he gets stuck in that. But I also love Tandy cuts into the record with a dagger, because that way it's a reminder of like, oh, I'm always going to be here inside your head. So technically he no longer has a physical body, but I guess it's like he's bound to that world as a god, but his power's been taken away and he's kind of stuck consistent. I mean, because like I said, I guess technically dead in the living world, because he's no longer there. He no longer has a physical body, but I guess he's kind of trapped in this perpetual state of kind of being stuck in that first record. I guess you can make the argument like that record that Delgado throws away, his soul is kind of bound to that now. So I thought that was pretty nice. They ended up saving the city yet again, and it's so interesting. I mean, don't also forget about like O'Reilly. Well, Mayhem being there. I mean, it's really hard to say at this point, because I like that conversation she has with Mina, because it's like, yeah, she put both her mice together, but she still doesn't know really who she's supposed to be. And so for her, you know, and it's interesting to hear that conversation with Mina, where Mina was like, basically the reason why she's researching that energy so much is because she's like, because of that, like, you know, what she did as a terror, she's like, I know that wasn't me, but she still kind of feels out of control. And I think that's something obviously her and O'Reilly can kind of relate on, you know, kind of being out of control and trying to get some control back and whatnot. But it was interesting because obviously there was people sitting there it was obviously people in riot gear. One of them ended up being Fuchs and everything, but you know, it's like, it's hard to say what was 100% O'Reilly and what was, like I said, Mayhem responding to him. I guess like there's a degree of separation, but not a full-blown separation like before. And so I think it's more so like it's Bridget, but I think she's someone else entirely now kind of situation. Like both halves have kind of come back together to not be the same person, but something else entirely different. And that's kind of how I'm looking at the situation. But I like the fact is that she deals with you. She kind of had to face her despair as well, and she kind of says what she has to say, of being like, saying that she misses him and that she's sorry, but more so about the fact that she has to blow him up, but still. But like I said, luckily when it's all said and done, they do save the day. But sadly, there's still no future between Tyrone and Evita. She never explained to him, I guess because for her it's too hurtful to kind of have, either it's like she's subconsciously doing it, or maybe, I think she's outright purposely doing it. No, because it's like, she does care about Tyrone. I mean, she literally married Aloha to save his life and everything, and I think for her, it's like, it's easier this way to push you away, because rather than telling him the truth, I think that'd be too many issues all on its own, So I think that's something that I interpret that as, but maybe subconsciously it's like because she no longer feels that love for him, or she kind of, her love is kind of for Aloha now, so maybe it's like her heart belongs to him and there's no room in it for Ty. Maybe it's a combination of the two, but it's just like no words were even said between them. She blew out the candle and walked away, and it just, it sucks. But we do see that everything kind of comes together. Like obviously Delgado gave that stuff over, and the senator and all the stuff that was covering up the fact is that Ty was guilty. He gets, exonerated. You see his mom and dad kind of being happy about it, but obviously there's still the whole thing of like his mom killed Connors and kind of has to still live with that regardless. You have O'Reilly stringing up his body. I was like, that's gnarly as hell. You do see one kind of cop kind of smiling and not, I guess it's kind of like, yeah, he kind of knew how much of a piece of crap Connor is, and I guess for him it's like everyone associated with that is like, you're going to get your due. Like he has a sign on him saying guilty, so I'm thinking that's O'Reilly being like, kind of being like the vigilante of like, oh, like while things are going down, like I guess like she'll full blown keep an eye out, if like anyone ever steps out of bounds again, they'll be dealt with type of situation. So I think someone else is kind of taking the fall for what happened, trying to cover up for Ty's mom. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, you also hope, it seems like maybe this could be the steps to piecing Ty's family back together, because his mom and dad are, because it seems like at the very least they haven't been under the same roof, except for that one time this season. I mean, who knows how long they've kind of been apart and separate, but maybe things can go back to healing because they don't have to worry about Tyrone being guilty, being hunted anymore. I think, obviously, like, Melissa and, Tandy are in a good place. Like I said, what this means, once again, for O'Reilly, maybe she just goes full-blown vigilante, which is interesting because I think in the comic book, she's just a pure villain, so it's just interesting to see the way they handle her character, and I mean, that's kind of the point, to kind of make it so she's not just one way. Just like Ty and Tandy kind of represents two sides of the same coin. She represents the same thing, so like I said, I think she's not, it's like, we'll just call her Bridget for now. It's kind of what Tandy kind of puts it as. We even see Leah kind of in a jumpsuit, like it looks like, obviously she's in prison. And it's like, well, to be fair, I guess like all the stuff that Andre did, he's not around, so a lot of that falls on her, because she did help kidnap a lot of those girls. So, I mean, it doesn't excuse anything, but I think it puts I think it's kind of like her having to confront what she did and have to live out her days knowing like she was a part of all that. Yes, it was Andre, but she still played her part and has to pay responsibility for that. It seems like Delgado is taking the church that Tandy was living in, and he's going to make, probably not, I don't know if he's going to outright return to the school, or whether it's just kind of like, no, I don't deserve to be there, but I'm going to start over. This is the next step to my journey. I've got to help people the best I can. The only way to make up for my past, I can't keep, trying to drown myself in all the mistakes. I've got to move forward, and I think that's something everyone's learning, that a lesson everyone kind of learns from this, so... It is pretty neat at the end, though. We do see Tandy and Tyrone leaving. What I also thought was pretty neat, too, is like when they hold hands. Because obviously when they touch, usually, that's, as they said it, that's when shit goes boom. But this time it didn't. I think because who they are right now, they've accepted themselves and they're, connected. They've accepted each other. So it's like their powers don't collide like that anymore. They're just, it's like, can we really do the whole hero thing, be this divine bear? And it's like, I think that's already kind of set that in stone. So it's like we see them leaving New Orleans because they got a path in front of them. It's like, hey, maybe there's some good we can do out there in the world. And I'm like, that's pretty neat. Seeing that it's not just like New Orleans, it seems like they're expanding out to the world. It's a situation I'm wondering, going forward, would there be, all of them in a new location dealing with new threats? Or would it be a situation of when it's all said and done, they'd eventually come back, to New Orleans because it is their home and whatnot. But it did seem like they were saying their goodbyes. Obviously, Tandy to her mom. Obviously, he didn't get to say anything, but obviously, he came to see Evita one last time, Ty. So it's kind of interesting to see, I don't know, it fills you with this warmness because it's like you've seen these characters like continue to grow, and just to imagine where they started off at and to be where they are right now. It's just, I don't know, it's a beautiful thing. It just kind of gets you all like sentimental and stuff, At the time of me recording this, it is still unclear whether or not this show is coming back for a third season, which obviously I'm hoping for. This show, dude, I can't wait to see where Tandy and Ty's story will take them next. The fact is, it's kind of interesting because it's like I brought up, it's like we could definitely see them kind of venturing out and kind of having other stories outside of New Orleans, like spreading their wings as hero, which is so interesting. Because, I feel like in a lot of superhero shows, it tends to stay in the same location. The thought that maybe they're out there venturing across the world trying to do their superhero thing, it's pretty interesting. Obviously, there's a long list of villains that, once again, like one I know for sure is like, there's always Mr. Negative, but I don't know if they're going to circle back to that. What about the energy that helped make them there? Like, is that all gone? Is Mina keeping tabs on that to be like, let's not tap into that because they're not tapping into it anymore, but like maybe that'll be something we can see going forward. Like maybe outside of New Orleans, they're still being like, maybe there's that energy came from somewhere specific that maybe Ty and Tandy end up having to face off with that. Would there be any future for O'Reilly? Would it just purely, would she just stay in New Orleans and once again be like a vigilante or something? I'm so curious to see, and maybe be a situation of we could potentially, live action wise, maybe there could be like other heroes that they end up bumping into, like across, like obviously everything that they've set up. Because obviously this is connected to a lot of like stuff that's sadly even canceled, but we know like Runaways is coming back for a third season, so maybe there'll be some connections there. Maybe not. I don't know. Once again, it's a whole thing of like, well, once again, Disney owns, I don't know if it's still just at 60 anymore. They might own more now, or might be in the process of owning more. But whatever the case may be, when it comes to Hulu, so there might be an easier way to bring that connection together and stuff like that. I don't know. I'd love to see what a next season would have in store. Like, obviously, to see what they'd be capable of. Would Tandy go back to the daggers now that she can use the sword? Will she, break it apart to do the dual daggers, but then bring it together to be, I'd love to see, because obviously this was a big expansion on their powers. I'd love to see even more what they're capable of in the third season, but what their story would be. Because they've gone through so much and they've grown together. But where does that story take them next, potentially? I'd love to see. So I am really hoping that we get a third season. And now moving on to this week's episode of iZombie, a great episode. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. It's interesting because obviously, there's this dude, Harris, who kind of comes off a bit like of an asshole. I guess you can make it seem like he's entitled, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm doing these pranks and stuff, blah, da, da, da. But he ends up getting murdered, and the moment Blaine ended up showing up, I was like, yeah, and Blaine's threatening him and everything. It's like, yeah, he's going to be number one suspect in this case. And obviously he has a, alibi and everything like that. But I just thought it was kind of fascinating because I was like, what's that really going to end up, whether or not that was going to be a big part of the episode. I do love that Liv and, Ravi are kind of all on it because it's like, oh, murdering people isn't above him. But obviously there was no missing brains and everything like that. So it's like, okay, but still. I just thought that was kind of interesting. The moment, I was like, oh, you messed up, Harris. It's like you're showing him disrespect and stuff like that. What was it he said? It's like, oh, I know exactly who you are. He made a reference to somebody where I'm like, okay, I kind of see that because, David Anders kind of looks like that respective. I'm blanking on a reference he made. I was like, I can kind of see that because David Anders kind of looks like that perspective actor. But nevertheless, Elaine was like straight up like, oh, I will kill you, you know, and it's like, oh, too bad he didn't know who he was messing with. An interesting thing I ended up finding out, because I kept looking at the actress who played Alice this episode. I was like, you look so familiar. I happened to see her name in the opening. The actress who plays her name is Gage. I'm going to butcher her last name, so I'm not going to say it. But I'm familiar with her. I was like, oh my god, because usually when I see her, she's mainly a blonde, just kind of like blonde with like, I guess dirty blonde, I guess would be the best descriptor, is like how I've always seen her. Obviously she was in a TV show called The Troop back in the day. I think it was like a Nicktoons TV show. She was also in the TV show Teen Wolf. She was mainly in season 2, but she was in a little bit of like first half of season 3. But I was just like, oh my god, I totally didn't recognize you, because like I said, she's like brunette in this. I was like, holy crap, I've only seen her as a blonde, you know, before now. But nevertheless, that was pretty interesting to find out. But obviously she's digging into the story, and I never really thought about it too much about like, oh yeah, Blaine's checkered past and everything. It's like, oh yeah, like not everyone would know about that. That's not public knowledge, because a lot of the stuff he was accused of, there was never any proof, because there was a lot of cover-ups to what he was a part of. So especially because like the captain or whatever at the police department, let's not forget, him in season 1, he covered up so much stuff that Blaine was associated with, you know, in that whole situation. So that ended up hurting that Blaine situation, like trying to take him down. That hurt it. But like obviously Alice is bringing up this whole thing of like, oh, you guys are talking about the fact is he killed kids, right? And they're like, no, we meant that, you know, because he sold drugs and drugs killed teens and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, because they brought up the whole point, because Blaine was like, oh, he's being an asshole about it, because he's like, oh, even if I did do something, which I didn't, but even if I did, you couldn't do anything. It's like, right, he's too important. It didn't even, like, he basically has immunity because he's so good at, you know, knowing that obviously he has this connection to Mr. Balls, you know, he has a connection with the underworld, so he's able to get brains into the city and everything. So it's like the city's going to need him to kind of keep going. And obviously, well, I'll kind of teeter back around to that whole situation. But the case is very interesting, because obviously it seems like, oh man, everyone loved Harris and everything like that. Obviously, Liv kind of gets some of that assholishness, because he's like, yo, we're going to do this, we're going to party it up, make a scene and everything, kind of prank and be like, oh, this and that. But it's like, no. Because it turns out actually the killer in this situation was the guy that was like his best friend. It was like Ham or whatever. But it's like, for him, it's like, yeah, you can understand why he did it, not like it justify it, but you're like, yeah, you understand, because it's like, yeah, I was tired of being his sidekick. It's just like he kind of brings me along in all his pranks. He didn't want me to kind of be away and stuff like that, because he needed me to be around to be, you know, that sidekick for him and everything, you know. So for him, I love the whole situation of bringing, you know, Steve into the case and everything. I love the fact that he's sleeping in the morgue and stuff like that, and it scared the crap out of Ravi. But I also love it. It's like what the password to Harris's phone or whatever was like, oh, I want to touch your monkey. And he just says that, and Liv's almost taken back by him. Like, that's not a phrase you want to just casually throw out there. You should have been like, oh, this is his password. You should have specified, because that's just not the best term to just hear thrown out. Those words together shouldn't be just thrown out there like without context, you know. So, but I love Steve kind of being like, oh yeah, like he's pretending to be Harris. Like obviously they took stuff from his will, the video, and they cut it to make it seem like he was still alive to draw out the killer. It's actually part of obviously Clive ended up talking about it later on. I'm like, yeah, that was a super stupid plan. I did love that to a certain extent too, that like Clive was out of the picture because he hurt his back, and I love like Robbie being like, you can't be all detective like when you're kind of with a broken back. You're not Batman. He's like, we don't know that. So that was pretty neat. Which is interesting, because making those references, obviously this is a Vertigo comic book, based on a Vertigo comic book series. Obviously that's under the umbrella of DC, which, hey, Batman's under DC, so it's just interesting. Full circle of some of that stuff. I just think it's fascinating. But nevertheless, I'm sure they can make those references anyway, but it just kind of is even more of a wink and a nod when you're part of that, like, DC family to a certain extent. Nevertheless, like I said. But I just thought it was kind of, you know, interesting. Obviously, like, you see Clive a little high later on because he got the meds and stuff, you know, the good stuff, apparently. But I love that it's like, oh, why Clive is away, the kids shall play. It's like, oh, Dad's away, it's time to live it up. It's time us to take over the investigation and stuff like that. Ravi wasn't really having it. Liv super was. But I love her being like, oh, you know, if we do take over the case, we can like get subpoenas and warrants, and we can harass Blaine. And like when I bring him into the interrogation, you can hit him with a phone book and everything. And that's what actually brought Ravi into wanting to do the case and everything like that. But obviously he was a little bit annoyed by everything that Liv did. Obviously, I love the whole thing too of like, okay, so what if we find out that actually Blaine behind this? And Liv's like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, we orchestrated this plan, got Steve pretending to be Harris. I even love the whole thing of like using cutout sound bites of him to kind of make it seem like he's still doing his like radio thing. I love that. I thought that was pretty neat. But it's like, okay, we got the bait and everything here. We got Steve pretending to be him. But it's like, what if it turns out it's actually Blaine and his goons that show up, trained killers? And Liv's like, no, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be Blaine. It's like, yeah, there's flaws to your plan. If it turned out to be Blaine, that would have been pretty... You wouldn't have been able to protect him with all that. But nevertheless, it turns into that situation of, sadly, Steve ended up getting shot. Luckily, he didn't die everything. But I love that Clive is like, okay, yes, it was a stupid plan, but it worked out in the end. So read him his rights. And I love that Liv is like, pauses, and she looks to Robbie. Robbie's like, I don't know. And it's like, all right, we'll leave it at you, detective, the other cop there to kind of read. I don't think she's a detective, but her to read his Miranda rights. So I thought that was kind of pretty neat. So there's that. Another element to this episode, we saw like, okay, Dolly and the Dead Enders are putting brains in the test tubes. I'm like, okay, what's the point of that? I was like, okay, because obviously it's like I was like, what's that supposed to do? Like, it's supposed to be like, oh yeah, here's, their brains and stuff. Like, I didn't know what they were planning on doing. And then it's like, oh, people start losing their memories and stuff. Like, we see it with Major, but apparently happened to other zombies too. Even like Amy, her ex-boyfriend in this case, Jamie, he was in that same circumstance. Because it turns out Harris actually bought a cure for Amy because she was a zombie beforehand. So I thought, it's like interesting how everything's kind of tying together in this certain regard. But it's like, okay, these missing memories, it's like, because each of those brains, some of those extra brain tubes were filled with Alzheimer's patients. It's like, dude, I was like, what is the purpose of that? I guess the whole point was to kind of like poison enough of the brain so they can like potentially influence some of the zombies. I don't know what they were really planning on doing that. I guess it's like I guess they wanted to see how it would work on a smaller scale and then pick it up potentially. I don't know what they were necessarily planning, because it didn't affect. It affects some of the zombie population, but not enough. But I guess it's like they were probably hoping like as long as people never found out about it, it'd be okay. But they kind of found out quickly enough that it wasn't a big enough issue. But this could be a test run for something else of kind of poisoning the brain supply. But obviously, Enzo takes advantage of this because obviously he wants a more heavy-handed approach to dealing with the Dead Enders. Obviously, Major doesn't, but he kind of orchestrates everything, make it like, oh, these were, Major's orders. But it's like, nope. Enzo kind of, brought out like batons and like, water cannons and stuff. And it's like, Major's like, you're such an idiot. Because I love him trying to cover up, like, oh, the fact is, oh, no, you gave these orders and stuff like that. Oh, the whole Alzheimer's brain thing, I didn't know about it. It's like, oh, no, the corporal told me, he totally informed you about it. And it's like, you doing what you did just made matters worse, because now all you've done is rile up the Dead Enders. Once again, Major made it clear. They are outnumbered. There are 10,000 zombies. Yes, zombies are powerful. You're strong. You could kill quite a few humans. But there's 500,000 of them, and all it takes is your brain getting destroyed for them to put you down. So it's like you're heavily outmatched. Plus, the government already wants to nuke the city already. You would think that kind of make you go a little hesitant to do that, but I guess it's like if we maybe they're thinking like if we take control of this city, we show that we're the dominant species, which all that's going to do is make people even more scared, even more willing to wipe you out. But maybe the whole point is like to take the whole town hostage, and like, are you really going to be okay killing all these people? Is the Americans in general, everywhere else aside from Seattle, going to be okay with it? And maybe that'll become a thing of like, oh yeah, people, because I think they even came up last season about how many people would be okay with Seattle getting nuked. I feel like that came up, but maybe that's just my imagination. But nevertheless, so Enzo gets put on ice. So there's already that situation. And then the floodgates start going. This is the most holy shit, everything is falling apart all at once episode. You got Alice. She ended up getting that vision about Donnie delivering the cure. So obviously she already knew about Bacchus and, the cure situation. But then it's like, Ravi and Liver, like, we totally knew he did it, but it's like we can't do anything about it. We figured he did it. Now because Alice is bringing up those questions, like, oh, we totally know. And now, she ends up going to Donnie, getting him a little drunk, and it's like, hey, I'm gonna let you guys, he let slip everything. The moment he brought up the Peyton thing, I'm like, oh, dude, that sucks. Peyton's literally helped one of the 3 things keeping this town together, and that's about to get disrupted. And Alice is there, kind of poking at her, like, "Oh, you couldn't see through." It's like, for one, don't be an asshole. For one, he pretended to be someone he wasn't. It's like, oh, he pretended like he didn't have his memories and stuff like that. Literally, everyone believed him, but now she's trying to paint it and make it like, oh, you're an idiot for believing him, and also that either you're an idiot because gullible because you're so in love with him, or you're just an idiot who, it's just like, don't disrespect Peyton like that. It's like, dude, the fact of the matter is she thought Blaine was a different person, and in some twisted way he was trying to be a different person, and she's even trying to paint it to be like, okay, so Bacchus is dead, and whoa, look at you, you're married now. Oh, maybe there's more to that. Maybe he did that as a love letter to you. It's like, no, maybe in his own twisted way it was. I don't think so, because obviously by that point there was no him and Peyton anymore, so there was no, but it still could have been like some sign. But I feel like it's just because he needed someone recognizable, and Bacchus was like a really big, obviously, political zombie and stuff like that. He was, mayor and everything, so it made sense to use such a public figure. So, and Peyton's telling her, do not release this because this is going to screw up everything. It's like, yes, we know how much of a piece of shit Blaine is, but the fact is, if you do this, it's going to screw up the Seattle getting brains and stuff like that. And yet Alice, publishes it anyway. I'm like, why? You're a zombie. You know how desperate this world is. Like, everything's literally teetering. You had an opportunity not to, but it's just like, oh, you want to name it. It's like, it's not going to mean shit when, like, Seattle gets nuked. I don't know why she did that. And also Blaine finding out. Blaine is not the most forgiving person. We know how petty and revengeful he can be. So I'd be a little nervous if I was Alice, but still, like, that was kind of a shitty thing to do. And especially the way she's painting Peyton. Like, Peyton has struggled so hard. Like, she didn't ask to be in this position, but lo and behold, here she is, and she's trying to keep the peace. She's trying to keep everything going. But Alice literally set off the fire that's going to ignite the powder kegs that is Seattle. And on top of that, Ravi's struggling because, like, Isabel's mom made a post about, like, oh, my baby died, but her brain, because of her condition, was able to be used as a cure. And it's like, Ravi was kind of nervous about it because it's like, oh, he's made all these other plans to make it so that the word doesn't get out about that situation. But then her article, like her post, gets picked up, and now it's spreading all over the place. It's like, dude, now those kids, because that's what made Robbie feel the worst, because it's like, Blaine is such a piece of crap. Everything works out for him. He steals, he kills, he manipulates, and he still comes out on top. And me, I'm basically useless when it comes to these kids being hunted down because their brains could be potentially used for cures. We've already saw, like, the high price for the cures naturally, and Blaine finds out this information. I was like, yep. I was about to say his entire empire was about to crumble down because, Mr. Boss isn't answering the calls. Well, apparently he's out of the country, or at least out of range right now, or whatever. And so it's like everything, the little cushy condition, like, setup he had, it's like, oh, it's fine and dandy, but it's like, oh, that's not going to be a thing anymore because now everyone's pulling out because no one wants any association with this. So that's going to be an issue because, no more brains in Seattle, hungry zombies. But then there's a part of me that wonders now, well, I'll finish my thought, but now you have Blaine being like, okay, so now that this is all said and done, now I'm going to get stuff really, he's going to take advantage of, like, oh, these kids, I'm going to kidnap them. Once again, we see he's not above killing kids. It's literally one of the first things we found out about Blaine, and, it's like, it's kind of interesting because we're kind of bringing that arc back, And it's sad, too, because in his own way, he did have a thing for Alice, and it's like he ended up backpedaling. Like, maybe you could make the argument, yes, he was a piece of shit in his past, but for him, it's like, yeah, he changed to a certain extent, but it's like, and he kind of did, because it's like, hey, like, I get respected, everyone kind of looks at me, and they're like, hey, good job, and stuff like that. He never got that before, but being who he was, so he actually enjoyed this position. He was cushy and everything, and yeah, he had a shady past, but the fact is, he was actually kind of changing a little bit, and Alice kind of sent that all back. Now, the thing that was crossing my mind that I was just about to bring up is, like, what if Alice works for that zombie, the one we met before, that is stealing all those people that were on ice from Fillmore Grace? Because Major's like, who's stealing them and for what purpose? And so I wonder, is that guy associated with Chase in any shape or form? Because obviously Enzo was like, oh, Chase Graves, and Major's like, yeah, sure, whatever, because obviously there was going to be people who still kind of believed in. It's so interesting to see Fillmore Graves kind of shift, obviously, from where it was in Season 3, where there's kind of divide on how things should happen, work, and now you see there was a continuation of that divide to a certain extent in Season 4, and now we see that still continuing. So, like, Fillmore Graves has just kind of been a mess all the way through the series to a certain extent, And now it's like, okay, so those zombies are freed. Now, the thing is, I'm wondering, I immediately interpret this as like, oh, there's these zombies that were on ice and everything, so I was wondering, is he going to, like, is that dude who's got this group together, this more extremist zombie, is he going to try and starve them so that they become, is he going to sacrifice them and be like, oh, you guys aren't just going to fall on ice, like, you're going to 100% go full feral? Because it seemed like one of the zombies didn't even look like he was, like, he had any humanity. It looked like he kind of went feral. So that's why I'm kind of like, is he going to wait for them all to do that? Was that just one that had already done it? Like, I figured everyone that was on ice was kind of cognizant enough. So I'm wondering, is he going to wait for them all to go feral? And then it's like, oh, there's these well-trained soldiers who are now just wild brainy, like starving them to the point it's like they lose their humanity, they lose their conscience. Like, he needs just weapons on the battlefield for, like, and you know, spread, like, I guess is amassing this army and everything. Obviously the dead enders are armying up. But the thing I was thinking is, what if Alice is connected to him? Maybe that's why she's trying to get things kind of to this point, because she wants to help make things. Because that's why I'm like, as a zombie, you would kind of not be all for Seattle kind of imploding. So, like, no matter what your job is, like, it won't matter in the end. I'm curious to see what that ends up turning out to be, like the whole Alice situation. It's like, I don't know why you would do such a piece of crap thing. Yes, Blaine's a piece of shit, but like, knowing and understanding why they're doing this, like, I don't know, like, truth be told is, it's almost like, I mean, she's like, oh, you couldn't see through him and everything. It's like, until you found out what you found out about him, it's not like you saw through him. So it's almost hypocritical for you to call him out and everything like that. It's like, yeah, you knew about some of his shady past, but it's like, oh, you didn't know everything about him. And it's just, now that's out there, like, that's just going to give the dead enders even more ammunition. It's going to be a crazy ride to see where all this takes us going forward into the next episode. Like I said, it was just boom, 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 hit after hit, just like bad news, bad news, bad news. Dude, I don't think it's ever hit us like that so far in the show. Maybe it hasn't, I'm just not thinking of a specific point, but dude, it's going to be insane to see where all this takes us going forward. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.